Hey, welcome back to the Morning Brew. It's good to have you along with us today. I want to thank Lindy's Cafe downtown at 5th and Central for the view out the window. We thank you guys at Lindy's. All right, it's time to move over here to the couch and greet our next guest. She is Anna Loiselle. She is a relationship coach, and I was just sitting here thinking, Anna, you and I have known each other several years now.
We have.
Yeah, we have. We go back a ways.
Probably about 5 years, I think.
Maybe more than that.
Not too many. I've only been here 7.
Well, it's about that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
when I first moved to New Mexico.
It's great to still work with you on this, and Anna's a regular on the show, and she's a relationship coach. If you're just meeting Anna for the first time, why don't you describe what that is?
Relationship coaching is essentially, it's an alternative to counseling. So marriage counseling, relationship counseling, couples counseling, it's an alternative to it. What the research actually shows is most couples don't need counseling. What they need is coaching. They need to learn skills, and that's what a relationship coach does.
Very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, it's great work.
And you work with couples all the time that do this kind of work.
Couples who are struggling in their relationship, or couples who say, look, we just want to improve the relationship. I also work with singles who say, gosh, I keep getting into the wrong relationship. What should I do?
Keep attracting the wrong
people. Right. And so what can I do? And so they're being proactive before they get in a relationship, which is super smart.
You just made a good point, though. You can see a relationship coach when things are going okay, and maybe you want to have your marriage or relationship better.
Right.
You don't have to be in trouble.
Right. You don't have to be, like you're worried that the relationship is going to end. I mean, you're at that point of crisis.
Yeah.
Truthfully, if you wait till crisis mode, it's a lot harder to save it. So if couples were really invested in the relationship, it's important to start before you get married. When you're engaged and you're thinking about, the wedding and all that good stuff, we spend tons and tons of money on the wedding, but do people actually invest in their marriage? No. So, and with our divorce rate being so high, it's really important.
I got to, speaking of love, then we'll get to the attachment theory and all that. But we have a few minutes to chat. I officiated a wedding over the weekend for my niece.
Oh, wow.
It was really fun, but the moment in the wedding, they were going to read vows to each other.
Uh-huh.
So the groom went first, Mike went first, and he pulls out of his jacket 2 pages.
Oh, no.
Well, actually, it was a page and a half. I'm standing there looking at it, and his bride she goes, "Are you going to read all that to me?"
She said that?
Yeah.
Did he read it all?
He did.
Wow.
And he poured his heart out.
Oh, that's nice.
It was, and he saw the wedding as a time to do that. He really went into what she meant to him and how she
devotion and
changed
love,
devotion all the way.
Oh,
it was
great.
It was a funny moment, and everybody at the wedding really laughed.
I bet.
But he was serious.
Yeah, he's like, y'all are going to listen to this.
Yeah, he wanted to say this to her.
Yeah, good for him. Good for him. That's awesome.
I thought it was fun.
Yeah, I bet.
All right, you work a lot with something called the attachment theory. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so attachment theory, initially a researcher by the name of John Bowlby in the 50s started looking at children and how they attach to their mother or primary caregiver. And what he discovered through his research is that children attach or bond 3 different ways. Essentially, there's 3 different ways. They're secure, or they're avoidant, or they're anxious. And so people may say, well, okay, great. What does that have to do with me as an adult and, dating and relationships? But what happened is later in the 80s, a couple of researchers by the name of Hazen and Shaver picked the research back up, and some other people have obviously along the way have been continuing with it, but they picked the research back up in the 80s, and they discovered that actually the way you attach to your mother or primary caregiver when you were a kid is exactly how you're going to attach in a relationship, the way you're going to bond.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of what that means. So.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. Like, what does that mean to me?
Right.
Yeah.
How does that play out in our relationship then?
Okay. So the three attachment styles, the secure, the anxious, and the avoidant, what we see is there's patterns in how you date, how you are in relationship, and sadly, how a relationship ends. And there's a lot of, I guess I would say, prediction is how it's going to go. So people who are secure, there's absolutely no problem for them to be in a relationship. Dating for them is super duper easy. They do conflict really well. And they're actually the 50%. So we know that we have a 50% divorce rate on a first marriage. They're the 50% who can do a marriage. They're going to have a long-term successful relationship. Now we get into the anxious and avoidant. The anxious actually, when they're dating, are well, they tend to be clingy, they tend to be needy, or so it looks.
They never know where they stand.
They're worried. They're super
they
worried.
worry about every little thing.
Yes, and also when they're married or in a long-term relationship, ultimately what they're worried about is that they're going to be abandoned or rejected. Okay? Then there's the avoidant, and when they date, it's very difficult for them to date because they're scared half to death of a relationship and getting close to someone. So in marriage, they often emotionally are really withdrawn and really push their partner away. So this is really important research. It's probably the most significant that's come along in decades that can, I don't want to say predict a success or failure, but it definitely represents a lot of what, can and cannot happen in a relationship.
So last time you were on, we had taken a little test to find out where we were at. You can still do that test, right? And find out what your tendencies are. Yeah, so it's a self-test, so you're going to evaluate yourself. Right. You can go to my website, you can find it there, and you can take that test. Here's what I want to say about that. I think it's a good starting place for people. I don't know, though, because we're self-assessing ourselves, but we can fully look at ourselves and know for sure. One of the ways that you can also tell, so the assessment is one place to start. If you're in question, if you've noticed that you've been anxious in relationship or you've been avoided in relationship, because those are the people who struggle the most in relationship. So if you're having trouble, if you've been in and out of a lot of relationships, you've been married maybe multiple times, or you're having trouble even getting into a relationship, you're more than likely anxious or avoidant. I think the thing is, though, you can go take that test and you can come out as secure, and then you're like, oh, well, then I'm fine. I just want to say you're self-assessing, so it's really hard for you to look at yourself. So you can go work with someone, a coach or a counselor that's has worked in the attachment theory. They can help you better assess yourself. The other thing is to just look at, do you notice that when you're in a relationship, are you afraid that you're going to get abandoned, rejected? If that's the case, then you're more than likely anxious, or if you're avoidant in a relationship. So meaning like most avoidants have a big laundry list of what their ideal is, and no one can ever fit it, and they make it almost impossible to get in a relationship because they want one, but they don't really want one because intimacy or closeness with someone is really scary. I'm sure you've sat down with that person and in a coaching session, they bring out this big list. Here's what I want in an ideal woman, and it's front and back. Yeah, really, they call themselves picky. They call themselves picky. Oh, do they? Yeah, but it's really I don't want to confront the fact that I'm scared half to death of a relationship. Here's what's really cool, since we're talking a little bit about dating, is that it's really important to also not only understand your own attachment style, but what are other people's attachment styles. Because if you're on the anxious spectrum and you get with an extreme avoidant, that relationship is going to be That's a mess. It's going to be, it's going to be really, really difficult. And that combination is what we see in coaching or counseling a lot. That's who comes that needs the most. There's a lot of fighting and there's a lot of discord because one person says, the anxious, I want to be in a relationship, I want to be in a relationship. And the avoidant says, well, I do too, but I'm scared half to death and I'm going to be over here. I'm going to be avoidant of the relationship. So you can imagine what happens there. That doesn't work. It doesn't work well. It can work, but it actually then requires a lot of work to make it work. There's a lot of work there. these are things that are just natural to us. It's the way we're wired. So it doesn't mean it's bad. It just, you have to know what that means to you in terms of relating with other people in relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you brought that up. It doesn't mean anything bad about you. It's just a place to say, here's what goes on for me, and I need to know myself well enough. Now, here's one of the things, you can actually reshape your attachment style. So if you're on the, extreme, there's a spectrum in those. So if you're on the extreme anxious or the extreme avoidant, you can actually reshape that and make it, more mildly anxious or more mildly avoidant. You can even shape into secure depending on the work that you do and the person that you're in the relationship. That's the other part of it is, if you could, Larry, I know you took the test and you came out secure, but if you actually got into a relationship with someone who was extremely avoidant or extremely anxious, your attachment style could reshape and
I could try and adapt to what they're dealing
and not be healthy for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I think this work is fascinating, and Anna's great, and she's a really nice person too. So if you want to work with her, get a hold of Anna. You see the website there, and she'll delve into this stuff a little deeper with you.
Yep.
Really great. I think it's fascinating.
Thank you. I do too. It explains a lot.
Anna Loiselle, one of our regular guests here, our relationship coach. Thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks, Larry.
All right. We'll be back with more on the Morning Brew in just a moment.